I decided to pick up probably the most important book of our generation for us software developers, and that is Vibe Coding: Building Production Grade Software with GenAI, Chat Agents, and Beyond. And let me tell you guys, we do not need to read this book. And the only thing that I got out of this book that I think anybody could get out of this book if they don't already know is /clear. \clear. Clear your context. Okay? It's very important to clear your context when you are using generative AI. Let's get into it. What did I think of this book? How would I give it? So right off the bat, I told you what I learned from this book that I found valuable. And if that's all you need, then thanks for watching. And guess what? You don't need to read this book. For anybody else that is kind of like interested in this book of like, what can a book about vibe coding offer me? I will tell you. If you have used any sort of thing a little more complicated than just ChatGPT, this book is already not for you. It's already past what you need. If you've watched any podcast about AI, you don't need to read this book. This book is just not necessary. It's not needed. I think I actually got some like interesting ideas around software because the writers have been doing software for so many decades, and some of their older information about how things used to be done I actually found very valuable, like how some of the frameworks for getting work done and how a engineering team might look and the processes and the little charts they had for those. But that was all to say like, okay, now you don't need these things, or here's how you're going to bake these processes into your AI orchestration. And so I actually found that information interesting, but not because, oh, I'm going to figure out how to bake that into my AI orchestration. I already know how to do that. It's you just go into Claude and you say, please use your orchestration to orchestrate many agents to complete the task at hand. And you can get a little more detailed than that if you want, but really that's all you actually need to do. There's not much skill in that side of vibe coding. I don't even know if there is a skill to vibe coding. I think it's still just a skill of engineering and you know what to ask for. So what did I like about this book? I liked that it did dive into some of the older, robust topics of software engineering. That was about 5% of the book. The rest of the book tried to sound like they were doing something new and they were giving you key information to build the software of your dreams. And they also mentioned how much AI helped them to write this book. Yeah, I can tell that AI helped you write this book. Holy cow, this thing is just one giant ChatGPT like generated thing. Every single paragraph like starts with the topic sentence. We then go into the information within that, and then we wrap it up at the end of the paragraph, and then we have nice little mentions throughout the book. Oh, and they definitely used AI to help them decide what their metaphor was going to be throughout the book. So we're comparing coding with agents to a kitchen, and you are a chef and you have your sous chefs. So you're the head chef and you're directing these agentic agents in your kitchen. And it was just like such a mediocre analogy that anybody could come up with something better if they didn't rely on AI to be like, help me come up with a great metaphor for how to use AI agents. I found the book lazy. I found it uninspiring, and it's hard to be critical of a book because I myself have never read a book. So right from the get-go, these authors are more successful and have more experience writing a book than I do. But that doesn't mean that I can't say I've read many technical books, and this was the worst technical book that I have read. And I'm a little worried that technical books are going to start utilizing AI, because that's how we know how to do things now, is utilizing AI, and they are going to be such a slog to get through. I'm not really sure how we're going to do this actually, in terms of what is going to happen to books, especially in the technical fields. If you want a book that is like hard to put down, it's so packed with interesting information and written so well, then that is going to be designing data intensive applications. That is a thick, complex book, but it is written in a way where every paragraph you go, I want to read the next one. And you can actually read that one for like hours and stay interested. Versus this book, I was speed reading half of it. I'm not a speed reader. I'm not very good at speed reading. I feel like I miss a lot of information, but I missed no information when I sped read this book. It was literally, I could do the old fashioned way where you just read the like middle portion of the text and you can just ignore the outside portion. I was still able to get all the ideas by doing that. I don't think that you really need to read this book. I initially had heard of this book on the Pragmatic Engineer blog, and it sounded interesting in that I was like, how do you write a book about vibe coding? One, it is such a new concept. It's only been around for about a year. Two, this book came out when vibe coding was only like 6 months old. And three, it's not really a skill. It's like how to watch TV. I guess you could write a book of like, here's how to watch TV in a way that you can like truly appreciate the art of TV. I don't know, but it's like, how do you write a full book? I don't have the physical one, but it's a thick book. I think it's well over 300 pages or something like that. So they somehow packed 300 pages of information about how to vibe code. You don't need 300 pages of information to teach you how to vibe code. And it's kind of crazy that I read the whole thing, but again, speed reading it. So the amount of time it would take me to read a more technical book that's 300 pages is way longer than it took me to read this book. Now, one of my big issues with it, I mentioned earlier, which is the use of AI to help in the writing process. I'm okay using AI to help in the coding process because you're not looking at the code. And even if you like, the user's not, you have to deal with that. And so a lot of times you might want to go in and clean it up. But if you look at AI generated code, it's not pretty. It's kind of a slog to get through. Even when you clean it up, it is riddled with comments, but maybe you should leave those there so that way it helps with the context. I don't really know enough yet, but I will leave them there for the most part. But this is like you're looking at the generated text, and it's just not pretty. It's not a well formatted book. And we're constantly talking about this kitchen and how your sous chefs are like going crazy, but they can create amazing omelets, but sometimes they create a pudding made of rubber or something like that. And it's just, what are we doing here? I don't think we need a book about vibe coding. Maybe I do think a really good book on engineering or AI engineering, I'm about a third of the way through, and I do find it quite informative, is AI Engineering, which is another O'Reilly publication. That one is a pretty informative book. I wouldn't be surprised if the author did use AI to help them, since they are an expert in AI, but it doesn't scream at you like this was written by AI. This book feels like it was written by AI. I think one good thing is then if you're out and about in the world and you're wondering, are books written by AI? You can tell, and so you'll be able to avoid books written by AI. So for the most part, I would steer clear of this book unless you too are interested in what can be said about vibe coding for 300 pages. That was really the most interesting part, and I'll tell you what can be said about vibe coding for 300 pages. It really goes into, first, we start from the very basics of opening up a chat window with ChatGPT and asking it to write code and then copy and pasting that into our IDE. Then we get onto a little more advanced topics of bringing that into our IDE with like Copilot or Codex or Cursor, things like that. I don't even use those anymore. Finally, we're introduced to Claude Code. And then it talks about how all you need now is a CLI. And it talks about how to install a CLI, how to open a CLI, like very basic stuff. I guess maybe this book was written for the entrepreneur who wants to learn to vibe code, but honestly, I don't think we need more of those. So, hopefully, I guess that's who it's written for. So if you are like somebody who's, I want to build apps, but I don't want to learn how to code, I just want to know how to vibe code, and you are so beginner at it that you don't even know how to open up like a CLI or a terminal, then this book's for you. Which admittedly, that exists probably for every topic. Like if you told me I had to edit a video with AI, I know so little information about video editing that I actually don't know how to use AI to edit videos. I've tried to experiment a little bit and it hasn't gone well. So there is some skill to using AI in that you need to have some knowledge of the thing you are doing. I'm sure if I tried to create like a comic book with AI, I would have no idea how to properly articulate my ideas to create a cohesive story with cohesive images all the way down. Just like somebody who probably has never written software probably gets lost pretty quickly after the initial CRUD features on localhost. And then once you're past that, probably starts to break down and you probably want to know how you can do it. And this book might tell you a little bit how to do it, but I think the better option is to just learn to code, even if it's learn to code for somebody, the equivalent of somebody with like 6 months experience. Like if you get like one of the, they don't have them anymore, I don't think, but you know, like a boot camp amount of experience, then you're probably set and you can run with it with your AIs and build something. But to just build something from scratch and you've never coded, I still don't know if this book is going to give you the information you need, but I will say this book does not say that's who it's for. It says it is for software engineers. It is thinking that a software engineer doesn't know how to use these tools yet, and I find that silly. I think all of us know how to use these tools, and we do not need to be told from a kitchen analogy for 300 pages how to use these tools. This book really, honestly, it just made me angry to read, mainly because of how poorly written it was. And I'm sure they had to get this thing out quick because this is such a fast moving thing. This is vibe coding in 2025. So, you know, this book probably isn't even relevant anymore, except for the Clear. I still, you know what? Now I use Clear all the time. I used to use it less, and now I make sure my context windows are collapsed ASAP. Kind of like I like to think of context similar to your Git branch, you know, commit often, merge often. That's similar to here. Clear your context often, and clear your context often. Make sure that you have the necessary documents to get your AI back up and running on as little context as possible. I don't even think it really went into that too much. I think there was a little bit of skills in here, but in terms of like context engineering, that wasn't here. And you know, most people who are engineers and deep in the AI rabbit hole will even say vibe coding's not really the thing anymore. We've moved on to agentic programming. We've moved on to context engineering, things like that. And so this book is even before that. So it's a unique little window into what was happening in 2025 with AI, but that's about all it is. And so if you're looking to read more books in your life, which I highly recommend. I think reading is just such a great way to get away from the screen, even though, you know, there's a Kindle, so technically I'm still looking at a screen. Then yeah, there are some great tech books out there, and I'll probably review those too, but I want to start with this one just because it made me upset to read. And I do like a book that gives me some emotion, because it did give me emotion. The whole time I was reading it, I was annoyed with these authors and I was upset. And I don't even think they like writing software. I don't think they're into building things. They seem to complain about, oh my gosh, we used to have to type on a keyboard. We used to have to think about solutions. We used to have to debug. Do you know how painful it was to debug? It was horrible. That's software engineering. Like, I don't think you liked it, and that's fine. But why are we writing a book about how horrible it used to be and now how great it is and how much you can accomplish with these tools? And it really made it sound like a silver bullet. It did have some critiques of like, you better watch your AI because it can really run off the rails. It can delete your whole database. It can completely wipe a lot of your Git repos, things of that nature. And so it talks about how to avoid that. But we also already knew that as well. So no new information from here. And I have a fun little hobby. I think like how some people like to watch bad movies, I like to read bad books. And so this was one of those ones that I read of like, this is just a bad book. So those are my thoughts on vibe coding. And if you want to pick up a copy, I'm sure there's one out there available to you, but I don't recommend it. So thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and tell me what tech book that you have read recently that you found a lot of value at, and I might check it out. And if you liked hearing just a riff off the head of book reviews, stick around because I'll probably make some more because I just love talking about those when I'm not talking about technology. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.